Let's go ahead. Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the town council meeting for the town of Clarkdale for Tuesday, June 27th, 2023 in the Clark Memorial Clubhouse. Vice Mayor Hunsetter.
Here.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Here.
Councilmember Jones.
Present.
Councilmember Babbitt Pierce. Please note that she is absent today. And note that Mayor Pridon Bauer is here. We have a quorum. Briefly, I will do this since there's just a few new people. The vision and mission of the town of Clarkdale. The town of Clarkdale connects our unique history, proximity to the Verde River, and small town charm to a future with a vibrant economy. We cultivate an environment where residents and businesses can thrive, providing services and jobs for our residents and capitalizing upon tourism. We sustainably enhance our infrastructure, support the arts and education, and develop recreational opportunities to create a bright future for our entire community. The mission, the town of Clarkdale serves the community by providing amenities, infrastructure, services, and public safety to enhance quality of life. We are stewards of our history while we sustainably and resiliently plan for the future with an emphasis on community engagement and transparency. Before we get started today, I just wanted to take a brief moment to express my condolences to the family of Vicki Roberts, who tragically lost her life on the Verde River near Tuzigood on Saturday. But I also want to give our deepest appreciation to all of those who heroically attempted to save her life. Our Clarkdale Police Department, thank you all. Several citizens, one of our ambassadors, along with the Verde Valley Fire District, Verde Valley Ambulance, Cottonwood Police Department, Jerome Police Department, and Yavapai County Sheriffs. I know all of you tried valiantly to save her, and at least her grandson is alive today. Thank you all very much from our heart. The first item on this evening or this afternoon is a general public comment. This is time for members of the public may give comment of a general nature. No official action may be taken by the council during this time unless it is to direct staff to look into a matter. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes. If you are watching online and would like to make a public comment, please send a chat message to our host, Charity Brooks, our town clerk, and she will let you in. If anyone is here this afternoon to talk about the gazebo, we do have that as an agenda item on the agenda, so please hold your comments until then. If you come up, please state your name and whether you're a Clarkdale resident. So does anyone wish to make a public comment? Please come up. That's fine. Just come up to the microphone and state your name and if you're a Clarkdale resident.
Hi, my name is Carol Schmidt, and yes, I am a Clarkdale resident.
Thank you.
I saw on the agenda that you are talking about celebrating Juneteenth.
Yes.
And I just want to say thank you, Abraham Lincoln, for instigating that wonderful Emancipation Proclamation, which eliminated slavery. Too bad Texas didn't inaugurate it, take it over already. It took them, what, 6-8 months later to do that? And so I just want to thank all the Republicans for taking care of business. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to give public comment? Hearing none, let's move on to what is always a special time for us, is the swearing in of a new police officer. Tristan Leach, please come forward.
Officer Field. Okay. So Tristan, his first week on the job, he was at Tuzigood on Saturday. He did an amazing job, really impressive and very trying experience.
Thank you so much.
Okay, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, could you raise your right arm? I, Tristan Leach,
I, Tristan Leach,
solemnly swear to support the Constitution
solemnly swear to support the Constitution
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and the laws of the state of Arizona.
and the laws of the state of Arizona.
I pledge to follow the regulations
I pledge to follow the regulations
and directives of the town of Clarkdale
and the directives of the town of Clarkdale
and the Clarkdale Police Department.
and the Clarkdale Police Department.
I pledge to support
I pledge to support
and implement the mission
and implement the mission
of the department
of the department
and act within the values of the.
and act within the values of the department.
I pledge to faithfully perform the duties
I pledge to faithfully perform the duties
of the office of the police officer.
of the office of a police officer,
So help me God.
so help me God. Thank you so much.
Right here.
Yes, sign official stuff.
You're like me when you get nervous, I can't write.
I came around, I don't want to be here with you.
Kristen, come here.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Welcome aboard.
Congratulations. Yes.
Here, I just want to say. Great having you here, but my boss, this fellow, we had to have cake today, so there's cake and water in the back.
Oh, my gosh.
Buttercream.
Buttercream.
Frosting. Oh, my gosh. Okay, can we save it till we're done? But you're welcome to eat it in the meantime. Go ahead. Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda is reports. Department reports, we had, they're all posted on our agenda. Building permit report, looks good. Magistrate court report, looks like we're having a few more things going on, like citations, traffic tickets. It's always traffic tickets, yeah. Water and wastewater report looks steady. Police department looks solid. Cottonwood area transit report. Yeah, it's hard to say. They don't do quite the graph that we do for our other departments, so I can't tell if it's up and down. So maybe we can work on that.
Yes, ma'am.
And the Verde Valley Humane Society. Take time if you want to read all of them. They are rather interesting reports. Let's move on to consent agenda. Council members, we're going to pull item B today, and we'll have it on our next agenda. That's the Maiden Clarkdale Facility Use Agreement. And just to say, because Marnie is not here, Councilmember Babbitt Pierce, and there will be two of us that will be recusing ourselves from that, okay? So we have only one item on consent. That's resolution 1695, designating the chief financial officer for 2024. The resolution designates the officer for fiscal year 2024, and I believe that's going to be Julie Goucher, our finance director. So any questions on that consent item? If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Vice Mayor Hunsetter. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Vice Mayor Hunsetter and seconded by Councilmember O'Neill to approve consent agenda item A as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carried. Okay, let's move on to new business. First item, 7A, is resolution 1696, the establishment of Juneteenth National Independence Day as an officially observed holiday. And Randy's not here, so Town Manager Guthrie, are you going to speak to this?
Yes, ma'am. So yes, Randy's not here today, but she did present this to me and I wanted to bring it forward to you all. Honestly, I didn't notice last year for some reason, I think because we were all so new. But it came to my attention this year that we have not adopted Juneteenth as a town holiday. And so we felt like it was an important step to take. And I have some history on it, but before I do that, I wanted to give Councilmember Jones an opportunity to speak to it first.
This is my personal post on my Facebook page from June 19th. Excuse me, give me a minute. My friend Jeffrey asked today, what does Juneteenth mean to you? My family did not grow up observing this tradition, though through my father's family, I am 6th generation African American. I spent this afternoon listening to my grandmother, Susie William Jones's oral history that is archived at the Harvard Radcliffe Black Women's Oral History Project. She passed in 1984, and it was just wonderful to listen to her voice, especially her laugh. So for me to know who my family history, which partly originates in the US, from the lives of enslaved women in rural Kentucky, gives me great pride and is further testament to the strength and fortitude of the free people of Texas who started this tradition. May we all find pride and understanding in the people who came before us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So from a budget impact, there's no line item adjustment, and it would just be an additional holiday for staff. So I don't have anything else to add unless you have questions.
Any comments? Thank you for your touching comments. That's beautiful. With that, I'll take a motion. Laura, would you like to make the motion?
Oh, I guess. I make the motion that we adopt resolution 1696, establishing the Juneteenth National Independence Day as an official observed holiday, the town of Clarkdale.
There a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Jones and seconded by Councilmember O'Neill to approve resolution 1696, establishment of Juneteenth National Independence Day as an official observed holiday. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carried. Let's move on to item 7B. 7B is resolution 1697, approving an intergovernmental agreement between the state of Arizona and the town of Clarkdale for the replacement of the bridge over Bitter Creek Wash. Susan.
Thank you. So you'll recall that back in February last year, we put together a group of people who worked very hard on a raised grant for that project specifically. And just to clarify, it says replacement of the bridge, it's replacing vehicular traffic on a new bridge. The existing bridge will be transitioned into a bicycle and pedestrian route, and of course retained and improved, just enhanced. So we did not get the raised grant, but hours and hours of time was put in. Ruth, several staff members, Council Member Babbitt Pierce and Council Member Bill Regner were very involved with that, as were some other board and commission members. So we did not get it, but we did sit through a debrief with them to learn what we could do better for next time. But before we could apply again this year, we applied for two other funding opportunities. One was a SMART grant through the state of Arizona, and then for just design of the new bridge. And then we also approached Senator Bennett and Representative Bliss and Representative Gwynn to take items to the legislature to fund both the design and the construction. We didn't know what was going to go through, so we kind of threw everything we could at this project. In the end, we got the SMART grant, and then we also, mostly due to the efforts of Councilmember Bill Regner, we also got an appropriation from the Arizona legislature for $6.3 million for this project. So this is the next step in the process, which is this agreement. And we're very excited about it. It's a lot of money for our small town, but it's a really wonderful project. It'll provide transportation, a backup method of reaching Patio Park. That historic neighborhood only has one means of ingress and egress. That's the 105-year-old bridge. It also is two of our largest businesses, the Verde Canyon Railroad and also Bent River Machines. And it's also the only access to the only freight rail access in the entire region. So lots of good economic development reasons to pursue this. So with that, I would recommend approval of this agreement through resolution 1697. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Any questions? This is a great opportunity. That area is an economic development area. It's an zoned industrial, as well as having a Patio Park, our historic residential area down in there. So it gives a safer way for getting people in and out of that community, and retains the historic bridge for walking and pedestrian use, which will be absolutely wonderful. So I look forward to us going forward with this grant and this opportunity. Yes,
May I say something?
yes.
Yeah, I have to say, I was a skeptic of this before I was on council, and I know there's been some criticism of it and whether this is the investment that the town should be making. And, you know, as I've thought about it and I've looked at what potential we really have in that area, I think it's great. And most importantly, for our residents of Patio Park and who have lived here for generations, will now make sure they have a secure way of in and out of their homes. So though the economic development piece is there, I also think our community in general will really benefit from this. So.
And this is unusual in that neither grant were we required to put up local match. So that's pretty much unheard of for any grant that you apply for. So we're, really benefiting from this process.
So we get to begin the planning process of all of this. We don't know where this new exactly road will be, but it will incorporate how we move the other road into a long-lasting multimodal bridge for pedestrians and bicycles. So I think it's a win-win for all of us. And you're absolutely right, Laura. It finally connects in a much more significant way, the Patio Park area for safety and access to our residents down there. So, yes.
I was just gonna say, it did give me great pause when I read the agenda and it said replacement. What, that's not what we talked about. So I did get clarification on that, and I guess it's required as part of the terminology, but it's replacing traffic.
Yeah, and we're replacing the traffic. The purpose of that bridge will no longer be vehicular.
That is correct. Language is always an issue, and sometimes we have to work with the language that is given to us for this. So this is the wording we have to use. Okay. Any other questions? Comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we accept resolution 1697 authorization to execute agreement for ADOT intergovernmental agreement for Bitter Creek Bridge.
Is there a second to that?
A second.
It's been moved by Councilmember O'Neill and seconded by Vice Mayor Hunstetter to approve Resolution 1697, the intergovernmental agreement between the state of Arizona and the town of Clarkdale for the bridge over Bitter Creek Wash. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. All those opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Let's move on to item 7C, second amendment to the reinstatement of development agreement Crossroads at Mingus. I'm just laughing a little bit, I'm sorry. Bruce Mayday,
I didn't
Assistant
come up
Town
with-
Manager.
Yes, I didn't come up with the original name. Like you said, I'm stuck with it. So before you, you have the second amendment to the restatement of the development agreement between the town of Clarkdale and the developer of Crossroads at Mingus. This project has been behind schedule for quite some time. They have benchmarks that they are required to meet in their development agreement. The first restatement requires that they have the park completed by the time they have either sold the 128th lot or we have issued them the 128th building permit. We're long past that with them. So we came to council last year with an amendment that would be the first amendment to the restated development agreement. And they were not able to meet the benchmark set forth in that development agreement. So we're back this time. We're with a second amendment that requires specific performance parameters as well as a financial assurance. So before you, you have the language for the amended development agreement. You have the construction contract between the developer and the contractor for the park development. That is part of this agreement, even though the town is not a party to that, to ensure that the developer and the contractor are doing what they promised they would do. And also a draft letter of credit from the developer through Chase Bank. Evidently, Chase Bank is even slower than we are and was not able to get it prepared in time. So staff is recommending that council approve this development agreement contingent on the receipt of the fully executed letter of credit from the developer. The stipulations of approval are as follows. The prints for the park need to be installed and completed by the developer no later than June 1st of 2024. The park improvements that are required are those that were in the first amendment, attachment A. The developer is obligated to maintain all of the landscaping, the irrigation, the recreation equipment, everything in the park for 4 years after the town accepts it, not after it's complete, after we inspect and accept it. That's when the clock starts ticking on their 4 years. Like I said, you have the guaranteed minimum or maximum price contract and also the draft letter from Chase Bank. Because this has created somewhat of a hardship for some of the property owners in Crossroads at Mingus, the language in the development agreement prohibits the town from issuing any building permits if they're not in compliance with the development agreement. So we have agreed that we will start taking permit applications, reviewing them and approving them. We just can't issue permits until we receive that letter of credit, because that's really our leverage here. And I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Go ahead, Laura.
I'm having a flashback. To when
I'm sure we're all
to
having.
when I was on design review board and we were working with Mountain Gate
Yes.
around their park. And I appreciate the effort that's being made to try to tie their hands. I don't have faith, quite honestly, in a year that this will be completed. So I would love to be proven wrong on that. That would be lovely. And I guess I'm also having a flashback farther back around. I remember something with Mountain Gate and a bond that actually never materialized. So I guess I really want to make sure this letter of credit is rock solid, because I remember there being promises of monies for other things that just sort of dissipated when a bankruptcy or whatever, the market turned down and all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate what you're doing and I want to make sure that we do it correctly and that it is they are very tied to us in this process. And I guess I have a suggestion going forward.
Mhm.
I think, in any development agreement going forward, that we stipulate that these type of amenities get built first in phase one. Because this is what happened in Mountain Gate, it's happened here. I don't doubt that it'll happen down the road again, where somebody says, we're gonna do this. And 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years down the road, they still haven't done it. And then we're doing this catch up versus making the development agreement saying your parks go in, first house goes in, your parks all go in, whatever it is, and they have to maintain them because I feel like it's the only way to hold their feet to the fire to make sure they actually do it in a timely manner. So.
Thank you.
2 cents.
Lisa,
I'm going forward.
thank you. Did they say why they couldn't complete it on time?
They said lots of things why they couldn't complete it on time. They had trouble finding staff. They had trouble getting equipment. It rained. There was bad weather. The list goes on and on.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to say?
Not anything that hasn't already been said, but I will reaffirm what Councilmember Jones said, that I have a friend that lives over in Rimrock and they had all the amenities built out before that first house was broken ground. So, and I think it helps sell the houses when they can see what the stuff is there. So.
No, I don't disagree. It's having, I think having that language, that's an excellent suggestion in bringing that language in now. Typically, when you tie it to a number of lots permits issued, developers are generally get it done because
They want, yeah.
the stick is no more permits. And they don't want no more permits. They want to keep building and they want to keep selling. It's unusual that you come back 2 and 3 times to have these kinds of development agreements amended and have a developer that just has a hard time performing.
This is not a I mean, it's a park, but it's a passive park. So there's not a lot of amenities in this park. And by the way, they have all the equipment out there. They've already started
That's right.
putting in the water lines. It's all sitting there. I walk by it every single day. So it's like, they started and then they stopped.
So what we have with this letter of credit, if they do not complete the park timely by June
Mhm.
1st, on June 2nd at whatever time, 12:01 a.m., the town manager can call the bank and say, we're calling the letter of credit, cut us a check.
Yeah.
We get the money, we finish the park.
Okay. Yes, Lisa.
So who? If we say no, who gets harmed?
So if we decline this, they cannot issue any more we cannot issue any more building permits in that subdivision until the park is complete. They can't sell any more lots in that subdivision until the park is complete.
So if I purchased a lot,
You're stuck.
I'm stuck.
Or if you want to put in a fence.
Right, you can't put it, we can't issue a permit for anything, a garage, a fence, pool, nothing.
And I understand there are several contractors in that subdivision who are not happy campers
Correct.
because they can't get their building permits and they're waiting to break down.
Would it be better for us to table this until we do get that letter of credit?
I think we can go forward with it. Like I said, I don't want to have it's bad enough that we can't issue permits right now. And we have people who they're drawing up plans, they're ready to submit. And it seems unfair to them because they had no idea to not be able to at least accept those applications and review what they're submitting and get everything approved so that when we do get that letter of credit, we can issue those permits right away. I have every assurance that they're going to do this. And if they don't, they're still held to the previous agreement because they haven't completed all the terms of this one.
So if we don't get the letter of credit, we just go back to the previous agreement and we
Right.
stop issuing building permits again?
This is all predicated on them fulfilling, getting us the construction contract and a letter of credit. So if they don't get us a letter of credit, they can't sell lots, we can't issue building permits. And that's not what they want,
So we go back, but that's where we go back to if that's the case.
right? Nothing changes until you guys get us this.
Any other comments? If not, if it's okay, we have one person who would like to speak on this item. Can we open it up for public comment? Leslie, do you want to come up to the microphone and state your name and if you're a Clarkdale resident? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leslie.
I'm not
Shiborski.
even going to try to pronounce your last name. If you want to pronounce it, you
Okay.
may.
Shiborski is my last name.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I've been living in Crossroads of Mingus for a year. The developer didn't build my house. And I just want to put up a fence. And I don't know why, whatever the decision is made here, why, why I'm held accountable to the contract that CMB set with the city or the town of Clarkdale. And so that's just my hardship, got a little dog, there's javelina out there. I really would just like to put up my fence that looks nice with my neighbor's fences. I'm not trying to build a new home. So this is why I came. Sorry, I'm late. I didn't realize it was at 3. Hi, Susan. Been nice to see you. But I thought I would come and speak on behalf of myself, but also I know I have neighbors that are also in the same boat.
And I think we feel your angst over all this. We need to have the developer get this park done. They're out of contract.
But I think what we're proposing potentially solves yours.
Solves the problem. If we sign this, if we approve this today, it starts moving, solving the problem. There's, okay.
Sounds good. Thank you for that.
Like, I don't know.
Yes, it's not an easy situation, but we need to get this park done and we need to hold the developer to get it done. And this is what the Second Amendment is all about. Any other comments? It's a frustrating moment.
I guess I didn't realize till just now that it's not just the building permits, it's any permits. that
It's
have
any
been-
permits in that area, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Because fences are technically a building permit of some sort.
Well, and if they're getting a tough shed or anything like that.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions, comments? If,
Make a motion?
yes, I
All
will.
right, Madam Mayor, Second Amendment, I move that we approve the Second Amendment to the restatement of development agreement with the Crossroads at Mingus, formerly Highlands LLC in Clifford.
Second to that.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Vice Mayor Hunsetter and seconded by Councilmember Jones to approve the Second Amendment to the reinstatement of the development agreement for the Crossroads at Mingus. Hearing any questions to that? No, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. 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 All those opposed, motion carried. Oh, do we need to make it excuse me, can we amend that motion to make it contingent on the receipt of the line of credit document? Is that agreed?
Yeah, so moved.
Okay. Just add that to it. It's agreed upon. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carried. Thank you. We're working on it. Okay, let's move on to item 7E, adoption of the tentative budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024. Welcome, Julie, Finance Director Julie Goucher. I brought my book.
I brought mine.
Mayor, relook at D just for a second.
Pardon me.
It's not, D is the capital project funding and water.
Oh, excuse me.
Report
I'm
the
sorry.
budget.
I'm trying to lose an item. I wrote wrong here. Excuse me. Let's back up. It's not the budget. We're going to do first, item 7C, use of contingency and capital project funding in the wastewater fund. Julie is also up for that.
Okay,
Excuse me on that. Too many budget things.
no problem. So this item is to approve the use of the contingency account and capital project funds in the wastewater department. At this point in the fiscal year, we're almost done with the year and we're almost fully spent in this operating budget of this fund. If you look at the whole budget with capital and debt, we're just about 70%. So we do have funds available, and that is primarily due to room and capital projects. So the contingency that we budgeted in the wastewater fund was $75,000. The contingency funds will be utilized this year to cover expenditures resulting from unanticipated repairs and maintenance. Some examples of those were a turbidity meter, Third North sewer repairs, some mixers and pumps that were replaced and or rebuilt, a new camera and power snake, and I'm sure there's a lot more. We can get Virginia up if you want to hear all about it. So therefore, the need to use that contingency within the operating budget is there for this year. On the capital budget, the wastewater department had included $736,000 of capital projects. $250,000 of that was for our Black Hills sewer extension, which has been deferred now due to other priorities of the department. So when the sewer line failed at First South this year, we set up a new project for accounting and tracking. And we've spent about $30,000 this year on that project. And as you all might remember, it's in our budget for next fiscal year to continue that. So there's no budget impact at this point. We're just requesting that the council approve the contingency account use and the capital project funding as presented.
Great. Would you like to say anything?
I could just add that technically the use of contingency is within my signatory authority. But we just for transparency like to tell you what we're spending it on, and also the establishment of the new project as well.
Any questions on this? This is like it's almost like bookkeeping. We just have to
And just
balance
making
it.
sure that you all are informed on the status of the fund, and you know, most of our other funds, as we've talked about, are much healthier than our wastewater fund. So wanted to keep you in the loop on all of the events that have been taking place.
Any questions, any comments? If not, I'll take a motion on this.
I guess my only comment is that our aging infrastructure is catching up with us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hence our big capital project budget that we're about to talk about.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the use of contingency and capital project funding in the wastewater fund for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Vice Mayor Hunsetter and seconded by Councilmember O'Neill to approve the use of contingency and capital project funding in the wastewater fund. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carried. Okay, now we get to the tentative budget. I just wanted to get it done. Okay? So adoption of the tentative budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024. Julie.
Thank you. Okay, so much of this presentation will be repeat information for the council and perhaps some of the audience members, but we do have quite a few new faces in the crowd, so please bear with us while we do this repeat performance. Our budget process, once we get our presentation up and running here. We start our budget process back in January. We asked our departments to start from zero and build their budgets from there. This year, we also asked them to identify which strategic plan goal area tied into each expenditure line item. You can go to the first slide. Thank you. And all the new line items and or initiatives that were submitted as supplemental requests. And so then we identified all of those requests, our base budget, we identified our capital projects, reviewed our revenue projections, and we analyzed our fund balance levels. So we knew what we had to work with. And after preparing the draft budget, we held 2 work sessions with the council where department heads and managers were present. And the full proposed budget was presented at the most recent town council meeting. So today we're presenting the tentative budget for the purposes of adoption. And then we'll hold a public hearing on July 25th with final adoption taking place at that time. And the tentative budget does set the upper limit of our expenditures in total. So this slide just shows us all the opportunities that we've had for public participation in the process. and points out the dates, so we can see here we are at June 27th. And our next action is public hearing, followed by the adoption of the tax. I'm going to turn it over to Town Manager Susan Guthrie, who's going to talk about our vision, mission, values, and goals.
Okay, well, I'm not going to read the vision because the mayor already went over it at the beginning of the meeting. So you've heard that as well as the mission. So thank you for doing that. Our values, I have to be like on two things, right? Okay, here we go. Our values for the organization are the acronym COPPER, apropos, customer focused, open, transparent, and equitable, preserving our history, charm, and our environment, planning for sustainable future, economic and social resiliency, and resourceful and innovative. Our strategic plan goals. So there's a huge matrix of projects that follow under each of these goal areas. Actually, today we provided the council with their update. It's 9 pages of this size. So, and it's color coded by the goal area. So goal area 1 is to preserve and celebrate Clarkdale's unique complex history. Goal area 2 is to enhance the quality of life for our residents, businesses, and visitors to Clarkdale. And goal area 3 is to enhance the quality and availability of parks, recreation, and cultural opportunities. Oh, you got it? Thank you so much. Goal area 4 is to strengthen and diversify our economy through cultivating a business-friendly climate for business attraction and strategically capitalizing upon tourism. Goal area 5 is to plan for maintenance and growth of quality infrastructure that is sustainable and resilient. And goal area 6 is to strategically invest in organizational development to enhance efficiency and service delivery and to attract and retain an exemplary workforce. So that's 6 goal areas, and every line item in the budget was tied back to one of these goal areas. And if we couldn't tie it back, it just begged the question, why are we doing it? So changes since the last work session. One of the things that we do, if you recall, we do our preliminary budget all in Excel, and you guys have been seeing those spreadsheets. Well, one of the cross checks that we do before we put it into our tentative budget that we submit to the state is we put it into Encode. So it's a cross check of all the formulas and all the numbers. So they went through that last week, and thank goodness, because we were able to find a couple of errors in this. So because of those, it was just a couple of items that we added. It didn't pick up the formatting to add it in the spreadsheet. So there was an increase to the total townwide department budget by $40,000 for tourism marketing. And just if you recall, that money comes directly from hotel occupancy tax. So that's what drives that number. And we moved it from community development into townwide budget because now we have Shell helping with that. So when that movement happened, it didn't get picked up. So now we know, and we've adjusted that. And we also have an increase to the total court department budget by $20,000, and it's just for a contingency. The general fund contingency line changes to $767,619 for a net zero impact on the overall general fund budget. So we basically just adjusted contingency down to make up for those numbers, and we still have an extremely healthy contingency budget.
So some of our major budget assumptions and highlights for fiscal 24 are that we're proposing a slight decrease in the property tax rate from 1.4765 this fiscal year to 1.415 proposed for next fiscal year. Also, due to the reduction on the state level of the income tax, the share tax that goes to the municipalities is increasing from 15% to 18%. Just for over the next 2 fiscal years only. And for Clarkdale, this is $207,000. We're utilizing that for capital projects so that we're matching our one-time revenues with our one-time expenditures. We also had increased assumptions for the wastewater and water funds due to new developments. We have our building permit revenues, which are budgeted to decrease fairly significantly from the prior year, just due to the way the economy is going. The interest income budgeted, though, on the flip side is much, much healthier than we had previously been budgeting. In fact, we're projecting about $600,000 this fiscal year, over half of which belongs to the general fund, so that's great. And we also have included our residential rental tax revenue in the contingency fund, still pending legislative action. I don't know if we have any updates. I don't think.
The last thing that I heard was that the Senate had not transmitted the bill to the governor. So we've been waiting for her to veto it, but it has not even been transmitted at this point, so.
And it probably won't be until they're back in session at the end of July, because they're all on recess now. So it's just sitting there waiting to be transmitted.
So we parked that
Included.
money in contingency just so that if we need to take it away, we can quickly do that and not have any impact on operating budget.
On the expenditure side of the house, we had very little change in our pension contributions, pretty modest changes in our insurance, health, dental, and property liability. We did include a 5% COLA this year for our town employees. And then we had $1.4 million budgeted to transfer from in the general fund for capital projects. But 1 million of that is coming from our fund balance, which means our existing reserves. And overall townwide, we have $19.2 million budgeted for capital projects. 6.6 million is coming from existing funds and $9.7 million is anticipated to come from grants. So that is covering 90% of our total capital project cost, which is pretty amazing.
Healthy.
Okay. So this just shows the breakdown of our the percentage of our general fund revenues and our general fund expenditures. And our general fund revenues provide for all of our departments, our police, public works, parks and recreation, capital, etc. And it's interesting to see it in this view because you can see that on the expenditure side, public safety is 23% of the budget. We have our local sales tax is 41% of the budget. So it kind of puts in perspective where our main drivers, what we have control over also on our state. For example, 87% of the general fund revenue is derived from state and local taxes, which we really don't have much control over.
My favorite point on that slide is that property taxes only represent 10% of the total general fund revenue, and that's half of the police department's budget.
Okay. The next slide shows the general fund revenue and expenditure history and the proposed budget by category. So while we're showing on this slide a 26.2% increase in expenditures over last year, when we look at operations only, it's actually closer to about 6%. And this is slightly up from our last presentation, which was 5% due to those corrections in the funds, but still very modest increase considering 5% of that is our personnel costs, which, as you know, is most of our expenditures in municipal government. And given the cost of inflation and everything, I think 6% is still very modest. Many of the changes that you see here are a result of shuffling, realigning of expenditures to where they are probably more appropriately positioned. So one good example of that was we had all of the town hall office supplies in our town manager's budget. And even though she was not the one ordering the office supplies, so we pulled that out of the town manager's budget, we put it into townwide. Another good example of that was our code compliance, which was in our townwide budget, but our town clerk is really the one responsible for all of the expenditures related to that and the approval of those. So much of it was realigning. We did have some that are, really large differences. You can see, for example, the capital improvement plan looks like we've completely wiped it out, but as we all know, that's not true. It's just that we're coding it to transfers out to our capital projects fund so that we can track all of our projects in the capital funds. Another example is Parks and Recreation shows a 39% increase, but we did add a full-time position to that line or to that department. Another one you might expect to be a little bit higher was the police department at 3%, but we have a full-time position right now in contingency because the police department has gone for a COPS grant, which potentially could help fund a majority of that position. So we're holding back on adding that to the department. Is there anything else you'd like to point out on this slide?
Just when that position gets funded, they'll actually be at an 11% increase. So it's in line with other departments.
The next slide walks through the calculation of the property tax levy. And as I said, at our last presentation. I won't bore you with the calculations, but my door's open if anybody wants to get into it. I'll walk them through it in as much detail as you'd like. But as Town Manager Guthrie had stated, the important point on this slide is that we like to talk a lot about property tax revenue. It is one of those things we can control, but it really represents 10% of the overall budget, so it's not a huge impact. And even though we're decreasing the rate this year, we're actually generating about $19,000 of revenue. And although counterintuitive, it's because we have new construction in town, so that's generating more. Okay, this slide shows our 3-year trends in the state and local taxes. And the main thing to note here is that the largest by far revenue source is our local sales tax. And so the next slide shows the breakdown of the local sales taxes in Clarkdale. And I know it's really difficult to see, but we have the presentation online if anybody wants to have a better view.
And on this slide, we normally want to point out that there's a category called online sales or remote retail.
Retail, yes.
Right, and so we always say shop local. So if there's a store in town that sells what you're buying, please use that store. But if not, it's better for you to order it online than to go somewhere else. Because if you order it online, we still get the sales tax that goes towards our streets and roads and parks, etc. So I order everything online if I can't actually buy it here in town.
And sometimes even if you can buy it in the region, it's better to get it delivered to your home and do it online. Like Home Depot, Walmart, all those.
So most of our local sales taxes here in Clarkdale come from construction, and then that is followed by utilities and amusements such as the railroad and the kayak companies. And we also have residential rental here, kind of that little peak just right of halfway through the slide, and that's our $125,000 that we're at risk of losing if the governor does not veto that residential rental tax. So in addition to our general fund, the town manages 4 enterprise funds, and enterprise funds are business type activities of the town, and they are funded through user fees. And from left to right, those are cemetery, sanitation, wastewater, and water, with the water fund being the highest at about 2.2 million. This slide shows the operating revenues without transfers or use of fund balance, just so that we can have an apples to apples comparison as we're looking at the trends year over year. Following slide, we have the enterprise funds, but now we're on the operating expenditure side. And same again, we are showing this without transfers or contingency, so that we're looking at apples to apples comparison. The most notable increase here, as you can see, the fiscal 23 in green is our projected year-end results, and you can see that those differ pretty significantly from what we're budgeting next year. And primarily that's due to our position vacancies in the town. We hired 2 new employees mid-year, and we've also had a vacancy in the director position. And in addition to that, we've added 1 more full-time position for next fiscal year. So if you were looking at a budget to budget comparison, that gap would be quite a bit smaller. Okay, we've spoken about the general fund and the enterprise funds, but in addition to those, we have, we administer and we track a bunch of other funds, I think 18 in total, and they total $40.5 million, and they consist of grant funds, HERF funds, streets, capital, donation funds. There's more going on even than the general fund and enterprise. And I'm going to turn it back over to Town Manager Guthrie to talk about our capital improvement projects that we have lined up for next year.
So in total, we have 48 capital improvement projects that are scheduled to begin at least or continue from the current year. And they, if you look across the spreadsheet, that basically tells you what fund they're being funded from. Funded. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'm going to touch on a few to give you a taste of what kind of projects we're doing. So we have building rehab and improvements is basically to this complex of $35,000. We have the public safety building rehab and improvements, $106,000. The Clark building north soffit repair, $45,000. Public Works redoing the roof and their windows. They leak like sieves every time it rains. And that is budgeted at $200,000. The auditorium floor will be refinished, $35,000. And then the historic building assessment actually began last week. So we'll see when we get the bill, which year it'll be charged to. Probably the year in which we receive the report, which will be next year. That's $30,000, and that's basically a historic architect telling us what things we really need to do to maintain the whole complex, particularly structurally. Let's see, for Selma Mangini Park improvements, we have $2.5 million budgeted for that project. And of that, 1.5 million are grants and 52,000 are donations, and the balance is coming from our CIP fund. So great job on that grant, Jeremy. The gazebo, we have that rebudgeted for next fiscal year for $223,919. I'm going to jump down to Caballero Park, which is budgeted at $431,000 and change. And again, 351,000 of that is grant funding, and then an additional 18,788 is from another grant. So a good portion of that project is also grant funded. I'm going to jump down to, let's go to the Broadway overlay phase 1 repairs. We have 125,000, and that's just to go back and touch up some of the things that happened in phase 1. We've noticed some drainage issues, so we're going to address those. Cemetery system wide upgrade, 193,000 out of the cemetery fund. Let's see, Public Works, we have a couple of vehicle replacements. We try to do that every year so that our fleet does not get behind and, we have to spend a bunch of money at once. So we kind of look at replacements every year when maintenance is outpacing the value of the vehicle. We have $500,000 budgeted for the first south sewer main. And if you recall, I went over this in the last meeting a little bit. Originally, that was the first quote we got in for that project. Subsequently, we worked with our engineer and they were able to find another solution that we estimate is probably going to be in the $100,000 to $200,000 range. So it'll save several $100,000, but it is taking a little bit longer because it had to be engineered. But we felt that was worth the cost savings. But we went ahead and kept this static because it then will leave some money for other sewer line breaks, as we know, are likely to happen. Let's see, we have the Mescal well treatment. We have $1.6 million budgeted in that line item, and we're still finalizing if that's a project we're going to be moving forward with. As you all know, we've hired a geohydrologist to take a second look at that, but we have put that money there. If we don't move forward with the project, it just rolls back into fund balance. We have $300,000 for our EPA lead and copper rule compliance. We have an RFQ out on the street right now for that project. We have $330,000 for the Panorama Booster Station. We have 89A Reservoir Rehab. That's the reservoir at the 89A water treatment station. And right now we actually had divers here last week on that project to determine the condition. If you remember that the ADEQ recommended we replace the top on that, and the recommended usually turns into a requirement the following year. So we're trying to get in front of that. Haskell Springs tank coating, $200,000. It's just really general maintenance that, periodically these have to be updated, but it's shocking what it costs to do that kind of thing. The ATP backwash tank and lift station, this is the arsenic treatment plant. We had a tank that we found to be leaking, and it's just very expensive to replace, and we were able to secure one. They've been over there doing a lot of the pre-work on utilities, so that's probably going to go in the next month or so, Ruth, I think. Okay. And then we also budgeted $250,000 in the water fund once the temperature drops, we want to go ahead and empty out those vessels and replace all of the medium in them and also inspect them for any kind of damage. They're getting old and we just need to do that preventatively. And then the last thing is the cellular meter program. To finish that project and get the entire town transitioned over is about $562,000. And we have applied for a grant for that, but we have not heard whether we're going to get it. If we don't get it, we'll continue on our normal pace of just those that are new, replacing them. But if we get it, we're going to hire a third party to come in and do all of them, which significantly saves a lot of water. Because we can immediately identify where leaks are happening instead of waiting a month. So that is the astronomical CIP list.
Are we tired yet?
Yeah, it's huge. We, as you know, we contracted for a town engineer this year. Probably the best thing that we could have done. But every time we meet with them, we're going over 20 projects at a time. It's a lot, but I'm really proud of that department who's functioning without a public works director. Ruth, Virginia, she's like, what am I, chopped liver? So Ruth, Virginia, Lisa, and Terry are the quadfecta that are running everything. And I mean, it's amazing what's getting done. And we're really proud of them and high quality work that things are really being accomplished. So thank you for that. I want to go back to how we're getting our funding. Next slide. Yeah. So we keep mentioning grants. And so probably every week we're getting reports of grants that are in. We got one this week for BEAD funding for expanding broadband in our community. We're going to be applying for that. But it's really the way we can do big projects without passing that burden on to our taxpayers. So on the next slide, you'll see we're starting over the next several pages to list all the grants we've applied for this year. The thumbs up means we got it. And then you'll see on the next page some that we're still waiting for, and just a couple. You can see that we're still waiting for the outcome of them. But the amount total, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. If we were to have gotten all of them, it would be about $13.2 million. Right now, we're running about 11.2 of having been awarded. So we're doing pretty good on the grant funding side. And I just want to comment again, that's the same staff that do everything else, are writing our grants and submitting them and right now working on compliance. So I really have to give a huge shout out to the team and our volunteers, because we have a few key volunteers who come in and help us write grants. So we're very proud of this. The last kind of section is, we thought it's important to go back to the goal areas and say, okay, of what we're adding or doing this fiscal year, how does that apply to our goal areas? So I'm going to have Julie go over the first one.
The color coding on these is that yellowish green color is our line item budgets in the operating budget. And then the blue is our capital projects and how those tie into the goal area. So our first goal area was to preserve and celebrate Clarkdale's unique and complex history. So some of our operating line items that support that goal area are the addition of a grant administrator position, which, as you might imagine, with $11.2 million already awarded, we're in need of. And then also our facilities maintenance, code compliance. Those are our sort of day-to-day activities. And on the capital project side, we have our historic preservation projects, our building assessments, renovations, the gazebo. Our goal area 2 is to enhance the quality of life for residents, businesses, and visitors to Clarkdale. And some of our operating budget line items that support that goal area are our recreation programming and events, our transit service contract, our opioid education program support for the schools, police protection. And on the capital project side, we have our Clarkdale Parkway sidewalk, pavement management, trails, planning and development. And it's also important to note that, and maybe an obvious something to say, but there are many projects that support many different goals. So the point of these slides is just to show examples of how everything that we're doing, all of our initiatives really do tie back into the plan, and they're thoughtful in that way. Our goal area 3 is to enhance the quality and availability of parks, recreation, and cultural opportunities. So this would be, museum and library facilities, parks and recreation programming and holiday events, our Verde River Wrap activity. And on the capital project side, we have our parks, Caballero, Selma Mangini, the playground safety equipment, and our trails master plan.
Okay, on our goal area 4 is to strengthen and diversify our economy through cultivating a business-friendly climate for business attraction and strategically capitalizing upon tourism. So you see the operating line items, the tourism marketing, and that's actually one of our ads over there to the right. So we have a steering group that helps us with all of that, and we're very thankful to those volunteers. We have economic development and planning, and then on the project side, you can see the 89A water and sewer infrastructure expansion project. We mentioned broadband, the Bitter Creek industrial area planning and the bridge, and also the PRV for our new hotel project. PRV, pressure releasing regulating valve, reducing, thank you. Pressure, I know what it is, pressure reducing valve, thank you. Okay, on goal area 5, which is our maintenance and growth of quality infrastructure, you can see the engineering funding, which is new for this year, building and grounds maintenance, street and sidewalk repair. And then on the capital side, you see a lot of projects, the bridge, the arsenic tank, backwash tank, looking at reactivating well 3, Centerville Road, emergency line breaks, that's a huge one. And on the emergency line breaks, we went over this in the last session because it was something that changed, but I want to touch on that. So our wastewater fund is not in great shape. The fees do not support the operation. They do on an operating level from year to year, but not on a capital basis, and also not on a, what do you call it, when depreciation basis. So when you look at the books on our wastewater fund, it's not in great shape, and that's problematic because then we can only budget for very small capital projects. Well, you all saw what the first quote on that one line, sewer line that went under the park was $500,000. And all of those pipes, or not all of them, but many of them are dating back to when those homes were built. And so we know that over the next several years, we're probably going to be dealing with this issue a lot. We know we have it on 3rd North. And right now we're in the middle of updating our whole map that shows what the condition is for every one of those lines. You saw earlier, we talked about buying a camera. Well, the camera goes into the lines and looks at what kind of root infiltration we have, what kind of oil and grease backups, how many breaks, all those types of things. And then we're assigning a score to it. So we do not have money in that fund to budget for those emergency repairs. So what we've done for this year is that we moved total of $1.5 million from general fund reserves into capital fund contingency. And the purpose of that is for it to just be parked there in the event we have an emergency line break that we do not have money to pay for the repair. I don't like to do that. I've been really open about that, but until we get that fund correctly funded, I need to have a way to do emergency repairs. So it won't happen unless we have to do those repairs, but we need to have the money available in that event. I mean, nobody's going to sit there and want their line to remain broken. We all know that. So then there's a few other projects on there. And then the last goal area is investing in organizational development. We have the personnel costs, succession planning. That's a really big deal for us, is not having where somebody retires and we have no one to move up into the position. So we're really working on preparing that next generation of leaders. IT maintenance and upgrades, I mean, it's a constant battle to keep our system safe and secure. We have our vehicle replacement program under capital and also buying some equipment that will really help the team, a dump truck and a backhoe. So our next items that are scheduled are July 25th is our public hearing and our final budget adoption. And then August 8th is we adopt the ordinance for the tax levy and we set the property tax valuations. So that is our tentative budget. And as Julie mentioned, this sets the upper spending limit. So after tonight, we cannot raise any expenditures. We can change the budget within those maximums. I just need to point out like all the great work that Julie's done, along with all of the department leaders. I mean, everybody's really worked together and I'm very happy with the quality of this budget. And thank you to the council for all of your work, working with us so that we can understand what goals and priorities you have for the community.
Thank you. Julie, thank you. Susan, thank you. This has been, we know it intimately. We have seen not just this presentation, but we've been through this book, what, two or at least multiple times. So it's a very solid budget. And I like that we continue to look at our strategic plan as the working document for what we do and how we spend our money and focus all of our activities. So thank you both and to your team and all the departments for working very hard to get us to this point. Are there any questions from other council members?
I have one question. That's something that I didn't see on the capital improvement, which is phase 2 of Broadway.
I just didn't say
It just
it.
wasn't in there?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's there.
Okay.
It's
I
been-
saw it somewhere else. so
Yeah, it's actually funded in the HERF fund, so it's kind of strange. And we are receiving $680,000 in grant funding for that project, and then we're paying for the design this fiscal year. So yes, it absolutely is, and we actually have to sign our agreement with ADOT, I think, in July for that. So within the next week or two, we should be seeing preliminary plans in order to stay on the pace of getting that grant funding.
Thank you.
And I guess the thing that I feel like I've taken away from this many meetings and going through this is the importance of actually trying to be proactive with contingency money, because the budget, our budget doesn't allow for changes or increases once we pass the budget.
Right.
So if
and-
we haven't anticipated something and we don't have it somewhere, if we don't have it in the contingent, then we can't do that. And so I guess I really appreciate the attention that has really been put to that process, because I think it gives us all a sense of, okay, if something goes wrong, we have the ability to deal with it without letting something else fall to the wayside.
That's
So-
been a new experience for both the town manager and myself, coming from other states where we were able to come back to the council mid-year and do take something from fund balance if we needed to. If we had an emergency, we would, sometimes it was a council motion. I mean, really easy to do. And so in Arizona, it's makes both of us very nervous not to have that. So I think we're hyper aware of having a strategy, on how to fund all of these, potential projects. And I think it's important to note too that because they are contingency, we're not just going to spend it. It's not a slush fund. It's not, there's everything will come back to the council, just as you saw tonight, and for full transparency. So I think that's important too. And any funds not spent go right back into that fund balance, and they'll be available for us to talk about next year.
So thank you for that.
I just want to thank you, Town Manager Guthrie, for your leadership in bringing this forward. It's been a very comprehensive process, very informative, very well thought out, just like everyone else has said. And I feel very engaged in the whole process and just well aware of things that have come up and why they're in there and fully justified. Thank you. And thank you, Julie.
Lisa, anything?
I'm just very comfortable at the scope of the budget. I don't feel, and God knows we've looked at it enough. I don't feel like we've got any, what about me out there? So thank you very much. I appreciate your work and staff.
I think this sets the stage for our discussion over the next year and stuff around our water situation and wastewater situation. So that there's much more information that we need to talk about. In both of these areas, you highlighted, the struggles that we're having with our wastewater fund and being able to have the monies to do the kind of repairs that we might see or have that cushion there. So we have a lot of discussions that we're going to have, not just here, but in the public around those two areas, which are critical areas for us, as well as being able to celebrate hopefully 2 parks that get underway and major rehabilitation and Trails Master Plan. So I look at this budget as touching all parts of Clarkdale, which is really exciting, is that we're doing a wide range of projects around the town. So that's what it says to me, and thank you both. With that, if there's no other comments or questions, I will. Is there does anybody have any questions from the audience? I could open it up for public comment. This is an important moment, so. I don't see any hands being raised. Did we just glaze you over?
Sorry.
Sorry about that. This is, we'll tell you, because there were a number of you in the audience who hadn't heard this. We thought we would take the opportunity to share it with you. So you're always welcome to ask questions of our town manager, of our finance director, around how we spend our money that comes to this town. But it gives a really solid picture of, we are healthy, we are fine. We just have a few internal struggling areas, and we will be working on that. But the town overall is very healthy and moving forward. So that's what's exciting about all of this. And if there's no comments from the public, I will take a motion.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we adopt the tentative budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Oh,
you can. No, you got it.
We have a motion to approve the adoption of the tentative budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024 from Councilmember Jones and Councilmember O'Neill. Hearing none.
Can we amend that motion to include the amount of $35,724,945?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
And also note that it's 13,927,898 is grant.
Those are additions to the motion. Is that accepted by the maker?
Yes. Yes. Sorry.
We wanted to make sure those dollar amounts were in there. So hearing nothing else, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. We have a tentative budget.
Yay, team.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item 8 is a discussion item only. 8A is update on the bandstand gazebo. Bruce.
Good afternoon, council members. I just wanted to give you an update on where we are with the bandstand. Can we go to do I get to push buttons?
I have it. I'm holding it.
They've got it over here. They're handling it.
Okay.
So when we started this project back in 2021, we started this as a rehabilitation project. As you all know now, the Secretary of Interior recognizes 4 treatments for historic preservation, restoration, preservation, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. So rehabilitation really is one of the more common forms of treatment for historic properties. And staff discussed in great detail with the architect, the historic architect, Mr. Otwell, about which would be the best approach. And this is the one that we landed on. So as we continue to, this project continues to morph as we work with the contractor, the historic architect and SHPO, we have discussed with SHPO in detail some of the things that we are trying to achieve with this. We can go to the next slide. And SHPO's suggestion is to change it from a rehab project to a restoration project. So the big advantage to a restoration versus a rehab is the restoration process allows for a far greater range of activities. So for instance, if we can repair the bandstand, or if we can reconstruct the bandstand and keep it standing, that's acceptable under the restoration requirements. If we can't, and it has to be disassembled, that is also acceptable under the restoration treatment. And that's what helps us. We're fairly certain we'll be able to keep it on the National Register using this restoration treatment. So if we go to the next slide, restoration is consistent with the town council's intent of preserving the structure to the greatest extent possible while maintaining code compliances. I want to talk a minute about the IBC because we keep coming back to this being a balancing act between historic preservation and the International Building Code. So the IBC covers commercial properties. If this were a private project, if this were a private group, for instance, the newsstand is a good example where that's a historic building. It's undergone a great deal of demolition. They've gutted everything in it. And in order for them to be able to reopen that building, they have to meet the International Building Code. So it has to meet all of the requirements of that building code because they're inviting the public in. So it's staff's position that if we're requiring it of the public sector, the town should be held to the same standard. So that's why we keep going back to the building official and the building code is to ensure that we are meeting the same standards that we ask all commercial property developers to meet. Given the issues with the original engineering report, staff is elected to work with the contractor, the historic architect, a new structural engineer, and the building official to come up with a new assessment of the structure that will provide us direction both for National Register compliance, which will be the historic architect, and for building safety, which will be the CBO and the structural engineer. Once we get those reports in, we are talking to SHPO about a voluntary consultation. This will be actually the fourth time actually, that we have talked to them about the regulations for the 4 treatments for this project. As soon as we started this project in 2021, I called SHPO to talk to them about a voluntary review. Then the historic preservation architect submitted a preliminary plan to the state architect shortly after his report was complete. We got comments back on that. We spoke with another staff member up there and submitted plans and comments in 2022 and got approval for that. So this, and then we've spoken with the state architect in the last couple of weeks and discussed this new configuration of approach, and we have gotten tentative approval and a request. We've submitted a request for a voluntary consultation. So again, once we get those reports in, those will all be submitted to SHPO so that we have a voluntary consultation and have comments back from them so that we can ensure that what we do keeps the structure on the register and meets all of the codes. Can we go to the last one? So taking this approach will meet the three goals the council has set forth for the project, which is to make sure that the structure is safe for public use because it gets a lot of public use, to make sure that it meets the building code, to make sure that that any updates that we do will add to the longevity of the structure, and to the absolute extent possible, keep the gazebo as a contributing structure to the historic district. When we talked to the state architect, we spent a fair amount of time talking about delisting. And in order to delist the property, the town would have to ask SHPO to do that. I'm not in any mood to do that, and I don't think any of you are, and I don't think anybody in the audience is. So it's not something that happens automatically. We have to go to them and say, you know what, we want to take this off. And that's not what anybody wants. So this is the process. This is where we're at in the procedure right now. We're in the process of scheduling the new architect, or I'm sorry, this new structural engineer, so that we can get them out here and get this additional review underway. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions? Yes, Lisa.
Oh, what's the cost impact?
The cost impact probably isn't going to be significant. Are you talking about having the engineer come back out?
Right.
So the contractor uses the same contract, the same engineering firm that just did the assessment on this building. So for that assessment to go through this building and all the other buildings in the complex was $11,000. So I'm expecting it to be somewhere between $2,000 to $5,000.
And there's continuity.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council before we open up to public comment?
So you mentioned that the fourth time we've gone to SHPO is a voluntary consultation.
Oh, yes.
And this is a proactive move to make sure that we do the right things,
Correct.
take the right steps to establish our goals.
Correct. So when you use, so SHPO requires the Department of Interior, if you use federal funds, and in Arizona, if you use state funds for a project, it has to undergo which is called a Section 106 review. And that's just to ensure that the funds that you're using do not negatively impact historic properties. Because we're not using any of those funds, we are not required to undergo any review with SHPO. However, because everyone is interested in preserving the history in this community and keeping this on the register and making sure that it meets codes, we are undergoing a voluntary consultation with them. But yes, the whole way we have been in contact with SHPO, had countless conversations with them on the phone, met with them in person. So it's been an ongoing conversation that we entered into proactively.
Just due diligence to make sure that we're doing that.
Correct.
Any other comments?
I'll hold mine till after public comment.
Okay, let's go ahead and open it up to public comment. If anybody would like to come up to the microphone, please state your name if you're a resident of Clarkdale. Is there any comments? Anybody online, Charity, would like to make a comment?
Cynthia Mollett, African United, pursuing grant funding.
Okay. Yes.
So on this particular project, we have an estimate of the cost, a contract with the contractor, and we have that amount of funding available for that project. If you listen to the whole budget presentation, you heard that we applied for $13 million worth of grant funding this year alone, plus some last year, and we have several more in the hopper. But generally, those are $6 million grants. We have the 200,000, so we didn't feel the need to go for a grant for this particular project. But I will strongly suggest that as soon as we get the report from the architect and the engineers on this complex, that we most certainly will have to apply for another grant. If you recall, I applied for a $430,000 grant earlier this year or late last year. for just to replace the windows in these buildings. And that was $430,000. So 100% will needing to be applying for grants. Just this particular project, we had the funding available to move forward.
And I think it's important to note that grant funding is not guaranteed funding. So you apply and you're in the pool of everybody else who applies, and it's the strength of the project according to criteria, whether it's funded. So we felt even if we needed to set it, make sure there were dollars for this project, whether it was grant funded or not. I think that's important, Lisa.
Isn't it also correct, though, that once you apply for a grant fund for an area such as the town of Clarkdale did, supporting the Miller Building, that you're not likely to get a grant, another grant? It's the same pot of money.
Well, I think that conversation came up when we were looking at us applying and also a private entity in our community applying. You're kind of competing against one another. That wasn't a case in this particular situation, but given staff availability of time and the time that we were using to apply for the other $13 million, we felt our time was better spent going after the $6 million grant than the $200,000 grant. So that's a leadership decision, and I think it was the correct decision to make.
Thank you.
Yes, Ruth.
That is typical. The Heritage Fund this year for historic preservation is the preliminary budget is $750,000 across the state of Arizona. So if, as Town Manager Guthrie mentioned, $450,000 will get us windows. So you can imagine how many other communities there are that qualify for these grant funds that will be applying for them. So they try to distribute them both on a regional basis to make sure that the money doesn't all go to Phoenix, doesn't all go to Flagstaff. And they also look at how many communities apply and whether communities apply more than once to try to be equitable with how they distribute the funding.
So you're saying that the Heritage Fund, just to reiterate, only had about $750,000 in it.
Right. So if we do pursue grant funding for restoration or rehabilitation or reconstruction or whatever of these buildings, well, it wouldn't be reconstruction, but they would be, we will be pursuing grant monies in several different venues. It won't be just the Heritage Fund. We probably use that as leverage for other grants.
And then recall, we did get a $500,000 Heritage Fund grant this year for Soma Mangini Park. So again, we're kind of dipping it. We haven't even started that project. We've been awarded the grant, but we haven't started physical work on that project. So I think Councilmember O'Neill's point is really good. Usually you want to at least start implementing the last grant you got before you go applying for another one. So out of the same pot.
Any other comments? Anybody want to speak? Charity?
No, Mayor.
Laura?
I guess I've had lots of conversation with people from across the community on the, perspectives on where and what we all wanted this project to look like. And I have to say that when I listened to what you talked about tonight, it feels like it checks the boxes for almost everybody has asked for. And that we all see how important historic preservation is to the town, that we all understand the importance of this particular structure to the town, that none of us want to see it bulldozed, knocked over, bing. None of us want to see that happen. We want to see care and tact given to its treatment, and that we are working to preserve as much of it as we can and to reuse the materials that we can, and that it will stay on, and if all goes well, it will stay on the register as a contributing structure to the town's bigger designation. So I'm really happy to see that. I feel like that this is that we've come to a place that everybody's voices in this really important conversation have been heard, and that we've found, I hope, a way to move forward, that we will all be in a year or whatever that timeline is, celebrating in the park with our new gazebo, and we can all dance up on the top. I also want to take a moment to say, I hope the energy that this has garnered in our community continues, because there are lots of things that are going to impact the historic structure and the historic nature of our town. And I hope that people are paying attention to the budget. I hope that people are paying attention to Planning Commission and Design Review Board and all of those other places besides Town Council that these issues come to, because there's a lot of work that's done before things get to us. And so I hope that people take that energy and can hold that energy and can bring those energies to those future discussions. So that's all.
Any other comments from the public? I concur with exactly what Councilmember Jones said. So much of this, yes, we make final decisions, but so much work is being done by all the people who sit up on our boards and commissions, as well as staff doing a lot of the background work to bring forward to our boards and commissions. We work on this very hard. Sometimes we have to bring in other aspects that might have not been seen by a board or commission, and we have to work that through the processes. It's a lot of work to get any one project done. And I'm very happy with where we're at on this one. It's going forward. A lot of work has been done, and thank you for the updates and keeping us well informed on this, and everybody well informed on this. If there's no other comments from the public, yes, come on up if you can, Uri.
Hi, my name is Yuri Randall, and I live in Clarkdale all my life. And I sort of think
This is a crying meeting.
Hearing no other comments, I think we are done with this item, and we will be keeping everybody well up to date and informed of the progress through our weekly updates and regular reporting to the council, to just keep it in front of everybody as we go forward. And don't hesitate, please, to ask questions, both of our assistant town manager and our town manager. We are more than happy to tell you information if we have the answers. We've got answers we're waiting for. We're looking forward to these next steps to see where we go from here. So thank you all very much. And with that, let's move on to future agenda items. Anything, we have our list in front of us. Charity gave it to us today for coming up on our next meeting, July 11th. And I believe our town manager is going to be out of town for that one. So we will, oh, and so is Laura. So we're going to have,
I will do my best to zoom in. I just
Okay.
can't guarantee it.
okay. I think our assistant town manager will be handling that meeting with us. We have several items there. Is there anything that we would like to bring up on future agenda items? Hearing none, coming forward. With that, I think we're done on that. So let's go ahead and take a motion to adjourn.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember O'Neill and seconded by Vice Mayor Hunsetter to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, we are adjourned at 4:38 PM. Thank you all very much.
I'm sorry.